Hello friends, the poem that I've chosen for today's discussion is La Belle Dame Sans Merci, written by John Keats. John Keats wrote this poem in April 1819 in a letter to his brother George and his wife Georgina Keats. He was inspired by a courtly French ballad written in 1424 by the French writer Hélène Chartier with the same title, La Belle Dame Sans Merci. The poem is structured in 12 quatrains, that is, stanzas with 4 lines each. The first 3 lines are written in iambic tetrameter, and the last one is a short line in iambic dimeter. The rhyme scheme is ABCB. The poem is structured in a question and answer format. Now, Keats was fascinated by the tales of knights and maids of the medieval world. He shared this fascination with many of his contemporary poets. The Romantics are known to have been very much enamored with the tales of the medieval ages. So here he takes us to a very medieval setting where we see a knight loitering aimlessly in a deserted plain. So let's read the poem first. La Belle Dame Sans Merci. The title, by the way, means a beautiful lady without mercy or with no pity. Oh, what can ail thee, knight at arms, alone and palely loitering? The sedge is withered from the lake and no birds sing. Oh, what can ail thee, knight at arms, so haggard and so woebegone? The squirrel's granary is full, and the harvest done. I see a lily on thy brow, with anguish moist and fever dew, and on thy cheeks a fading rose, fast withereth too. I met a lady in the meads, full beautiful, a fairy's child. Her hair was long, her foot was light, and her eyes were wild. I made a garland for her head, and bracelets too, and fragrant zone. She looked at me as she did laugh, and made sweet moan. I set her on my pacing steed, and nothing else all day long, for sidelong would she bend and sing a fairy's song. She found me roots of relish sweet, and honey wild, and manna dew, and sure in language strange she said, I love thee true. She took me to her elfin grot, and there she wept and sighed full sore, and there I shut her wild eyes with kisses for. And there she lulled me asleep, and there I dreamed, ah woe betide, the latest dream I ever dreamed, on the cold hillside. I saw pale kings and princes too, pale warriors, death pale were they all. They cried, La Belle Dame Sans Merci, had thee in thrall. I saw their starved lips in the gloam, with horrid warning gaped wide, and I awoke and found me here on the cold hillside. And this is why I sojourn here, alone and palely loitering, though the sedge is withered from the lake and no birds sing. So going back to stanza 1, there is an unnamed speaker here who meets a knight who is wandering alone in a deserted moor. And he asks the knight, he's worried when he sees this man all alone, and there is something wrong, something truly amiss with the man. And so he approaches the young knight and asks him, what can ail thee, knight at arms, alone and palely loitering? So why are you here? And what happened to you? What can ail thee? Ailment. Ailment is illness. Here it means what troubles you? And why are you alone here? Where is the rest of your army, or whoever would, your train, who would accompany you? The sedge has withered from the lake and no birds sing. So it is winter time and it is extremely cold. The sedge is a plant that grows by the side of water bodies, And even the sedge has withered. Even the sedge, which can withstand extreme cold, has withered from the lake. And no birds sing because the birds have all disappeared. So, what are you doing alone here in this place? And he repeats the question, oh, what can ail thee, knight at arms? So haggard, you look so tired, and so woebegone, so lost. And once again he goes on to say that it is winter, the squirrel's granary is full, because we know that the squirrel, like the ants, usually collects and keeps the food ready for the extreme winter season, when food will not be available. And so the squirrel's granary is full with nuts and acorns, and the harvest's done. So since the autumn has passed and the winter has crept in, the harvest is all done. So at this time, it's not common to see a man wandering alone in the cold. Are you lost? What is the problem with you? I see a lily on thy brow, with anguish moist and fever dew, and on thy cheeks a fading rose. So he says that I can see that you are very pale, that you are very pale. A lily here means his brow is white, it is pale because a lily is a white flower, and maybe his forehead is creased. It is kind of crushed in the form of a lily because he is frowning, he is unhappy. And there is anguish writ large on his face, and on his cheeks too there is a fading rose, means the color of his cheeks too are draining. They withereth. Withering is when a flower loses its color and dries up and the petals fall off. So here he says that the rose on your cheek is withering. You look extremely pale. What is troubling you? So these three stanzas are spoken by this person who meets the knight. And now it is the turn of the knight to answer. And the knight speaks now. He says, I met a lady in the meads. Meads here means meadow. And she was so beautiful. She looked like the child of a fairy. She had long hair and she was light-footed. And she had huge, wild, glittering eyes. And she was so beautiful. And he says, even without saying, it's understood that he fell in love with her, head over heels in love with her. I made a garland for her head and bracelets too. So he says that he plucked fragrant flowers from the meadow and made a bracelet and a garland out of it and adorned her with the garland and the bracelet. And she looked at him with great love and made sweet moan. So she spoke a language which he couldn't understand, and she couldn't understand his language too. But she made noises, sweet moans, which told him that she loved him, that she too was attracted towards him. I set her on my pacing steed, and nothing else saw all day long. For sidelong would she bend and sing a fairy's song. So he carried this young lady and placed her on his steed. Steed is his horse, and went forward riding along with her. And he says he didn't see anything else because so enamored was he with this beautiful fairy child. So she sat before him and she would bend and sing a fairy song. Though he couldn't understand what the song meant, he found it very attractive and beautiful and melodious. And she took him to her place and she found him roots of relish sweet. So she fed him roots that tasted very sweet, and she also gave him honey wild and manna dew. Manna is the food from heaven that fed the people during the Exodus towards Israel when the people had no food. The Exodus, of course, was led by Moses, and When the people began to starve, Moses prayed to God and he fed them with manna. And sure in language strange. So here he only means that fresh and tasty manna dew. Dew that tasted almost divine. And in a strange language she said, I love thee too. So though he did not understand what she said, he guessed that it must be an expression of her love for him, because she looked like she was in love with him. She took me to her elfin grot, and there she wept and sighed full sore, and there I shut her wild, wild eyes with kisses for. So she took me to her place, and that was a grot. Elfin here means a small place. Elf is a supernatural creature, like we talk about elves and fairies, mythological creatures, and a grot refers to a grotto, a cave-like structure. Usually grottos are man-made, but here I guess it's a natural one, a cave. And she took him there, and she, for some unknown reason, wept and sighed. And he tried to console her because he did not have a language to console her. He went into action. He bade her not to cry, and he shut her wild, wild eyes with kisses for. And then she lulled me asleep. So there he spent some time with her. And finally, she sang a beautiful song to him, and she lulled him to sleep. And in that sleep, he says he had a very sad dream. And that was the last dream. The dream was the last thing he remembered on that cold hillside. In the dream, he saw pale kings and princes too. Pale warriors, death pale were they all. They cried. So he, in the dream, saw that he was surrounded by kings and princes, from their attire, from the sword that they held in their hands. He recognized them to be warriors, kings and princes, but all of them were pale, death pale, as if they were lifeless. And all of them stared at him, and they cried in one voice, in a unanimous tone, La Belle Dame Sans Merci, thee hath enthralled. So they said that you have been enthralled and entrapped. You are under the spell of the lady who has no pity. So that is the last thing that he remembers about his encounter with the lady and this experience, this very unearthly experience. I saw their starved lips in the gloam, with horrid warning gaped wide. So the gloam is the twilight. And so he says he saw their lips starved, as if they had eaten or drunk anything in ages. And they all stared at him with horrid warning. And suddenly he says, I woke and I found me here on the cold hillside. And so when I woke up from this nightmarish dream, this is what I saw, and this is where. And when I woke up from this nightmarish dream, this is where I found myself. And I have no idea where I am and what has happened to me. This is why I sojourn here, alone and palely loitering, though the sedge is withered from the lake and no birds sing. So he says, this is all that I have to tell you. This is why I am here. Sojourn is wander aimlessly, or sojourn is a short visit. So here it means that this is not a visit that he did on purpose, but somehow he finds himself in this strange place, not knowing how he reached there. And though the sedge is withered from the lake and no birds sing, I find myself here all alone. And we can see that the last stanza very much resembles the first stanza. There it was a query, there it was a question, here it is an answer. And we end at the same place where we started. So that is the poem. La Belle Dame Sans Merci, and it is a very mysterious poem. And as is wont of Keatsian poems, he prefers not to explain because he believed in this negative capability, and he felt that to enjoy art, to enjoy creative art, there should be no irritable reaching after the truth. So he doesn't bother to explain who the lady was or what exactly transpired between the two. And again, he gives no explanation as to who those pale warriors were. He leaves the questions to us for us to answer. Was she some sort of a creature, a supernatural being who feeds on young men? This character of this lady, it reminds us of the Yakshis in the Kerala folklore, who attracted men with her beauty and drank their blood and killed them and drank their blood. So is this lady too somebody like that, who charms men into her web like a vicious spider and drains them out of their life and blood and then discards them? So is he a lucky one who had a narrow escape from them, because all the others, they seem death pale? So maybe they were the souls, the ghosts of the dead men. So was he the lucky man who escaped from her grasp? Was he the lucky man who escaped from her clutches? So it is up to us to decide or to wonder about the implications of what the poet leaves us with. So this is one interesting poem, though it doesn't give us definitive answers. It certainly stimulates our interest and imagination. And the theme here is fatal attraction. How now Keats himself was in love, but then his love went unfulfilled. In the first case, when he fell in love, he was rejected, and then later, when he fell in love with Fanny Brown, there were many unfortunate things that happened to prevent the fruition of his love. His illness came in between, and he died young too, at the age of 25. So he had never had the opportunity to enjoy the fruition of love. So here he talks about the fatal attraction, of how it is a kind of a warning maybe against men who are attracted to women, who are attracted to beautiful women. So the external appearance lures many men, but what is important, what is really important and what really matters is the person within, the character of the woman, not her external appearance. And then again he talks about the transience of beauty, how this beautiful lady disappears. So if she symbolizes beauty, her disappearance symbolizes the transience of beauty. He's also talking about melancholy and despair, and the setting is ideal, a desolate and a barren landscape, which reflects very effectively the state of loneliness of this poor, dejected young man. And the young man might as well be Keats himself, the desolate Keats who never had the fortune to enjoy the fullness of love. So this is a beautiful poem, and it has inspired many paintings. Keats is an expert in word painting, and as we read, it is so easy for us to imagine the landscape and the dapper young man, the knight, dressed in his finery, riding on his horse, and then the beautiful fairy-like young lady with long hair and sparkling eyes, and the ghosts maybe of the pale warriors that stand around him. Everything is so visual, so vivid. And this is a poem that imparts pleasure anytime you read it. So thanks for listening to me.